On November 18th, 1978, in a clearing in the jungle of Guyana, 918 Americans died. In a single afternoon, over 200 of them were children. The official account calls it a mass suicide. Survivors and forensic evidence tell a different story. Many of them were murdered. They were held at gunpoint. They were injected with cyanide. The children were killed first, so their parents would have no reason to resist. This did not happen in a distant country to unknown people. These were Americans. From San Francisco, from Indianapolis, from cities across the country, who had followed a preacher named Jim Jones to the jungle because he promised them a better world. How did a man with a church in Indianapolis end up ordering the deaths of 918 people in South America? This is the full story. Nothing left out. James Warren Jones was born on May 13, 1931, in Crete, Indiana, a small town that had almost nothing to offer a boy who wanted to be something. His father was a World War I veteran, damaged by gas attack, distant and unreliable. His mother worked and was largely absent. Jones spent his childhood in the company of the local black families, who tolerated a lonely white child who showed up at their churches, and found there something he had not found anywhere else. He could preach. He could hold a room. He could make people feel seen, chosen, part of something larger than themselves. He was doing it by the time he was a teenager. He founded the People's Temple in Indianapolis in 1955, preaching racial integration at a time when such a thing was genuinely dangerous in Indiana. His congregation was multiracial in a city where that was almost unheard of. He built hospitals. He ran drug rehabilitation programs. He found housing for the homeless. He did real things for real people. He also, from very early, showed signs of something else: an addiction to control, to adulation, a need to be the center of everything. He claimed to perform miracles. He staged fake cancer healings. He told his congregation that he was a reincarnation of Jesus, Lenin, and Buddha simultaneously. And people believed him. In 1971, Jones moved the People's Temple to San Francisco. At its peak, the church had 20,000 members. Jones had the ear of politicians at every level, from city supervisors to the President of the United States. He was appointed chairman of the San Francisco Housing Authority Commission. Nobody looked too closely at what was happening inside the church. Inside the People's Temple, a different reality existed. Members were required to sign over their assets and wages to the church. Dissenters were publicly humiliated in catharsis sessions, forced to confess sins before the congregation while others screamed at them. Members who tried to leave were threatened. Their families were told they had become enemies. Some were beaten. Jones was increasingly dependent on prescription drugs: Valium, Demerol, amphetamines. His sermons grew longer, more paranoid, more apocalyptic. He began conducting what he called white nights, middle-of-the-night rehearsals for a mass suicide he called revolutionary death. Members were given drinks they were told were poisoned. When they didn't die, Jones told them it had been a loyalty test. In 1977, a New West magazine investigation revealed abuse within the People's Temple. Jones panicked. He moved approximately 1,000 of his most loyal followers to a settlement he had been building in Guyana, a remote jungle clearing he called Jonestown. In Jonestown, the control became absolute. Members worked from dawn to dusk in the tropical heat. Food was rationed. Sleep was rationed. Mail was monitored. Anyone who tried to leave faced guards with weapons. Some members were kept in a building called the Extended Care Unit, drugged into compliance. In November 1978, Congressman Leo Ryan, a Democrat from California, representing constituents who had family members in Jonestown, flew to Guyana to investigate. He was the first sitting member of Congress to die in the line of duty in American history. Ryan and his delegation arrived at Jonestown on November 17th. They were treated to a performance, a community celebration, music, smiling faces. Some members passed notes to Ryan's team asking to leave. Ryan agreed to take them. At the Port Kaituma airstrip, as Ryan's delegation and 16 defecting members attempted to board planes, Jones sent armed men. Ryan was shot and killed on the runway. 3 journalists and 1 defecting Temple member were also killed. It was the first assassination of a sitting U.S. congressman in history. Back at Jonestown, Jim Jones went to the microphone. What does it take to convince 918 people to die? And what does it say about human nature that some of them, even at the end, chose to believe him? But here's what the official story leaves out. The recordings from that afternoon in Jonestown, the death tape, were not turned off when the dying began. A reel-to-reel recorder captured the entire thing. On the tape, parents weeping, children screaming, members standing up to argue with Jones. I think there are too many people here who don't want to die. Jones telling them it was too late, that the congressman's death meant federal troops were coming, that death was the only revolutionary act remaining. Many of them did not die voluntarily. Forensic evidence at the scene showed that many victims had injection marks on their bodies. They had been forcibly injected with cyanide when they refused to drink. Others had been shot. The children had died first, administered the poison by nurses at Jones's direction, before their parents were given a choice. Revolutionary suicide was what Jones called it. For many of the 918, it was simply murder. The bodies were discovered by Guyanese authorities and American military personnel on November 19th. 918 dead, laid out in rows, in the jungle, under the Guyanese sun. It was the largest single loss of American civilian life in a non-natural disaster until September 11, 2001. The U.S. 1001. The U.S. military spent weeks identifying and repatriating bodies. Many victims had no next of kin to claim them. More than 400 were buried in a mass grave in Oakland, California. Jim Jones was found dead at Jonestown, a gunshot wound to the left temple. His death was ruled a probable suicide. No one witnessed it. The gun was found nearby, but the angle and location of the wound led some forensic investigators to question the suicide ruling. In the days and weeks that followed, relatives of victims filed lawsuits against the CIA. Their argument? The CIA had knowledge of conditions at Jonestown, reports of drug shipments, weapons, violence, and had withheld that information from Congressman Ryan. Had Ryan known, he might have reconsidered his visit. He might have lived. His delegation might have lived. The lawsuits were dismissed. The CIA connection to Jonestown has never been definitively proven, and has never been definitively disproven. Researchers have documented Jones's connection to Dan Mitrione, an American intelligence operative who worked in Latin America. They have documented the CIA's monitoring of Jonestown via surveillance. They have documented that a CIA officer was present at the Port Kaituma airstrip the day Ryan was killed. None of this proves operational involvement. All of it raises questions that official investigations have never fully answered. When a government knows that its citizens are being held against their will in a foreign country and does not act, what is its responsibility for what happens to them? Why does Jonestown still matter? Because it is not primarily a story about a cult. It is a story about what happens when a charismatic leader exploits real social grievances, poverty, racism, isolation, and offers people belonging, purpose, and community. The People's Temple worked, at first, because it addressed real problems. It integrated a racist city. It helped addicts. It fed the hungry. The very things that made it genuinely good in the beginning were the things that made it impossible for members to leave when it became something else. The mechanisms Jim Jones used: isolation from outside relationships, control of information, the systematic replacement of individual identity with group identity, the use of violence and humiliation to enforce compliance, are the same mechanisms that researchers now document in online radicalization, in domestic abuse, in authoritarian political movements. The people who followed Jones to Guyana were not weak. They were not stupid. They were people who wanted to believe in something, and found a man who was extraordinarily skilled at making them believe. That skill is not unique to Jim Jones. It appears in different forms in every generation. Jonestown is not a historical curiosity. It is a case study in the specific vulnerability of human beings to the offer of belonging. "Don't drink the Kool-Aid" became an American idiom. Most people who use it have no idea what it refers to. The 918 people who died in Jonestown deserve to be more than a phrase. The Jonestown investigation produced more than 50,000 documents. Many remain partially classified. The CIA's full role, if any, has never been disclosed. The survivors have spent decades trying to reclaim the narrative of who the People's Temple actually was before it became what it became. And the death tape, the recording of the final 45 minutes at Jonestown, is available in a declassified FBI archive. Most people cannot bring themselves to listen to it. The ones who have say they never forgot it. Hit the bell. The next story is already waiting.